Assessment of the PRECEDE-PROCEED model and how it worked for the Check It program. There are many strengths of the PRECEDE-PROCEED model for implementing health promotion programs in community settings. First, the model helps you see the full picture of not only the problem, but the step-by-step on how to address the issue and implement a program that is not only beneficial to the target audience, but is created specifically for the community through engaged stakeholders and community involvement of the planning and evaluation phase of the program. One component that is extremely beneficial is the model is very similar to a medical framework and works backwards from the desired outcomes to create a blueprint of the intervention. This approach helps programs reach their anticipated results by diagnosing the program, analyzing a solution, and closely monitoring the program so adjustments to the plan can be made as needed. The PRECEDE-PROCEED model guides researchers through different planning stages and incorporates community engagement to develop a comprehensive program to implement. By breaking the planning stage into 4 separate steps of the PRECEDE phase, program planners can lay down the groundwork before program implementation and evaluation begins. PRECEDE allows researchers to get an understanding of the community they are working with by talking to members first through focus groups, interviews, and surveys. This initial assessment helps identify the issues within the community and see how these members' environment, lifestyle, and behavior affects their health outcomes. Although there are multiple strengths to the PRECEDE-PROCEED model, there are some limitations. For example, one of the strengths of this model is that it is very comprehensive. However, for some programs and initiatives, this is a drawback. Due to the complexity and detail needed for every single phase and step, it might be too hard to plan out that much information. Or, some programs that are being implemented on a smaller scale do not require as much resources and do not go into the amount of detail that the PRECEDE-PROCEED model does. Such as, if a high school is thinking about providing free condoms in the health center, a detailed implementation plan is not necessary. Another limitation to the PRECEDE-PROCEED model is that it requires a lot of time and effort from many different people. Although this is not necessarily a bad thing, it usually just takes a lot of time and effort to recruit community members, stakeholders, and program staff to implement and evaluate the program. For my case study on proposing a diabetes self-management program called Check It, it was really useful to use the PRECEDE-PROCEED model for taking the time to plan out the evaluation prior to any work starting. As we have learned in our readings, there are often not enough time or money left in the budget to spend on evaluation. By determining the exact process, impact, and outcome evaluation during the planning of the proposal helps keep researchers accountable and know how to allocate their time and money to make sure enough is spent on the PROCEED phase. One challenge I encountered was trying to limit the number of objectives I wanted to evaluate with the Check It program. Because my program involved a high level of engagement and process for delivering context to community members, it is hard for me to determine which areas I want to focus on and would be achievable. Because the PRECEDE-PROCEED model indicates to only pick objectives that can be reached in a certain time point, I had to restrict the number of measurable objectives. If this grant was longer than 2 years and more than $25,000, I might have been able to work in additional objectives into the scope. Finally, one challenge I think would be difficult for my case study and others is dependent on getting community engagement and volunteers. Although this program would potentially be beneficial, a lot of time would be needed to spend on getting community members to provide feedback on the program, as well as recruit people to actually help with the program facilitation and meeting leadership. As you can see in the table, I would need multiple volunteers to help run the program. I think this would be definitely a time-consuming barrier that might affect program sustainability and implementation. Moving forward, I would recommend using the PRECEDE-PROCEED model for those attempting to implement multi-component programs that benefit from having a detailed assessment, implementation, and evaluation design. As stated earlier, this model may be too comprehensive for small-scale programs that do not require that much detail. Finally, I would suggest engaging community members and all other stakeholders you plan to participate in the program at the beginning of the program development to assess their level of involvement before starting the planning process. This way you can get their commitment and will not feel like you're scrambling to try and find someone who when you are ready to implement. Thank you.